The salesman looked at the man in the worn jacket and made a decision before the man finished walking through the door. It took him 4 seconds. For seconds to look at the jeans, the scuffed boots, the hair that had not seen a barber in months, and conclude that this particular Thursday afternoon was not going to produce a commission worth his time. He was wrong. He was wrong in the way that people are wrong when they confuse the price of a man's clothes with the weight of what that man is carrying. And by the time he understood how wrong he was, the entire showroom had gone silent. A legend had walked back out into the California sun, and a story had begun that nobody who witnessed it ever fully recovered from. Apex Luxury Motor Cars, Beverly Hills, California. A Thursday afternoon in October 2019, 3:18 in the afternoon. The October sun pressed down warm and golden through the glass facade of the building. Outside, Rodeo Drive moved at its usual pace of unhurried wealth. Inside, the showroom operated in a different atmosphere entirely. Cooler, more deliberate. The kind of environment that had been designed not just to sell cars, but to make certain people feel that they belonged there and certain other people feel that they did not. The ceilings were 40 feet high. The floors were white Italian marble, the kind that reflects everything and forgives nothing. Crystal pendant lights hung at precise intervals from exposed steel beams. The furniture was dark leather and brushed brass. Complimentary sparkling water was served in crystal glasses etched with a dealership crest. The salespeople wore charcoal suits that had been selected from the same tailor. Everything in the room communicated one thing with absolute consistency. Your presence here is a privilege, and that privilege must be earned. Today's centerpiece stood alone in the middle of the main floor beneath a single directed beam of overhead light. A 2019 Rolls-Royce Ghost extended wheelbase. Custom commissioned. One of one. The exterior finish was called Celestial Silver Mist, a color that did not exist in any standard Rolls-Royce catalog and had been developed over 8 months at the atelier in Goodwood specifically for this vehicle. The metallic compounds in the paint were calibrated to respond differently to different qualities of light. In direct sun, it appeared silver and clean. In shadow, it deepened toward something closer to pewter. At dusk, in the particular horizontal light of a California evening, it turned a pale and luminous blue-silver that one engineer at the factory had described in his notes as the color of moonlight on still water. The original buyer, a real estate developer for Newport Beach, had paid an additional fee just for the color development. He had died of a heart attack at 59 before taking delivery. The car had sat in this showroom for 7 months. The asking price was $1,200,000. At 3:11 in the afternoon, the front door opened. Keanu Reeves walked in alone. He was 55 years old and carried nothing that announced who he was. Gray canvas jacket, softened at the collar from years of use. Dark jeans, plain black boots with the beginning of a scuff on the left toe. No watch, no rings. His dark hair fell past his collar, slightly undone from the wind outside. He moved without hurry, without the particular performance of a man who expects rooms to rearrange themselves around him, because Keanu Reeves had never been that kind of man, and the people who knew him well considered that one of the most remarkable things about him. He walked directly to the Ghost. Not browsing, not drifting. He had known exactly where it would be. He stopped in front of the hood and looked at the color. He stood there without moving for a long time. The salesman at the nearest desk was named Trevor Hollis. He was 32 years old and had been at Apex Luxury Motor Cars for 3 years. In those 3 years, he had developed what he privately considered an excellent instinct for customer potential. The instinct operated primarily on visible information. Clothes, watch, posture, the quality of a person's shoes. He had refined this system to the point where he could make a preliminary assessment in under 10 seconds and had found it accurate often enough that he had stopped questioning it. He earned $290,000 in commissions the previous year and had begun to understand that number as a kind of proof. He looked up from his desk. Canvas jacket, no watch, jeans, boots with a scuff. He stood, adjusted his cufflinks, walked across the marble with the smile he had practiced into something that looked genuine from a distance. Good afternoon. Welcome to Apex. Is there something I can point you toward today? Keanu did not turn around immediately. He was still looking at the color of the car. This finish, he said quietly, as if reading something. Trevor came to stand beside him. Stunning, isn't it? That is celestial silver mist. Completely bespoke. That color exists on this car and no other vehicle anywhere in the world. Keanu reached out. His fingertips stopped 2 inches from the hood. He held them there for a moment, then lowered his hand. How much? He asked. Trevor performed his calculation one final time. Jacket. No accessories. Hair needs attention. This vehicle is priced at $1,200,000. With California taxes and registration, you're looking at approximately $1,380,000 all in. He delivered the number the way he always delivered it, with weight, with a measured pause after it. He watched eyes very carefully in that pause. The eyes almost always told him what he needed to know. Keanu's eyes did not change. I want to sit inside, he said. Something hardened behind Trevor's practiced smile. I completely understand the appeal. However, our protocol at Apex for featured vehicles at this price point requires either a verified proof of funds letter or a formal pre-approval from a qualified lender before we can open the interior for access. It is a standard policy applied across the board. He let a precise half-second pass. We do have an exceptional certified pre-owned collection in our adjacent building. Several beautiful vehicles in the 500 to 700,000 range. I would be very glad to walk you over and... You are walking me to the pre-owned lot, Keanu said. I am offering you an alternative that may be more. You looked at my jacket and decided I cannot afford this car. Trevor's smile held its architecture. Sir, the protocol exists to protect the integrity of the man who came in before me. Dark suit, gold watch. You opened the door of that Bentley before he finished his first sentence. Trevor said nothing. I watched from the parking lot, Keanu said. 2 other salespeople at their desks had gone quiet. A woman named Diane, 11 years at Apex, had stopped typing and was watching with the particular stillness of someone who has seen this kind of thing go wrong before and knows exactly where it's heading. Trevor straightened. When his voice came back, it had dropped the customer service register entirely. Sir, I'm going to be straightforward with you because I think it is more respectful than continuing to dance around it. This is a $1.2 million automobile. My responsibility is to this inventory and to the experience of our verified clientele. If you are genuinely in a position to purchase at this level, I would invite you to return with the appropriate documentation, and we will provide you with every courtesy this dealership offers. He paused. If you're not in that position, I think the honest thing is to say so now rather than waste either of our time. The showroom was very quiet. I would also ask you, Trevor continued, and his voice took on an edge that had not been there before, not to touch the vehicle without authorization. The paint is a bespoke finish that cannot be replicated. Any contact risk is something we take seriously. Keanu looked at his own hand, the hand that had stopped 2 inches from the hood. I did not touch it, he said. I am asking you as a precaution. I did not touch it. Trevor took 1 step closer. Sir, I'm going to need to ask you to either proceed to our pre-owned building or exit the showroom. I do not want to involve our security team, but I will if... Trevor. Diane's voice came from across the room. Quiet. Very controlled. Trevor did not look at her. Keanu looked at Trevor for a long moment. Not with anger. Not with the particular wounded pride of a man who has been publicly diminished. With something much harder to read. Something that had been a long time forming and was now simply present in his eyes like a geological feature. He reached into his jacket pocket and took out his phone. He dialed. 1 number. He had not put on speaker. He held it to his ear. 1 ring. 2. A man answered. Yeah, it's me. David. I am standing in a showroom called Apex Luxury Motor Cars on Rodeo Drive. The owner's name is... He looked at Trevor. Trevor's throat moved. Caldwell. James Caldwell. James Caldwell. I need his personal number in the next 3 minutes. Give me 90 seconds. Keanu lowered the phone and looked at Trevor with the same quiet expression. Trevor stood very still. His mind had begun running a search that it should have run 12 minutes ago and was now running with the particular urgency of a process that is arriving too late. David. The name, the tone, the way the call had been answered immediately with, "Yeah, it's me," the way people answer when they have been waiting for a specific person to call. Trevor's eyes went to the canvas jacket, the jeans, the hair, the face, his internal system, the one he had spent 3 years refining and trusting completely, produced a result that made his stomach drop approximately 6 inches. The phone in Keanu's hand rang. A voice came through that Trevor recognized not from memory, but from the specific quality of authority it contained. Controlled. Precise. The voice of a man for whom being interrupted on a Thursday afternoon was a significant matter. "This is James Caldwell. Mr. Caldwell, my name is Keanu Reeves. I am standing in your showroom. Your senior salesman has just told me that I need to either go to your pre-owned building or leave the premises." He almost called security because I was standing near a car I intended to purchase. The silence on the other end lasted 4 seconds. "Trevor Hollis?" James Caldwell said. Trevor's collar had become a different size than it was when he put it on this morning. "Yes, sir," he said, barely above a whisper. What followed was not a raised voice. It was something considerably worse. James Caldwell spoke in a tone that had been compressed to its absolute minimum. The way pressure is most dangerous, not when it is released, but when it is contained. "Trevor, you're going to walk to the Ghost right now. You're going to open the driver's door with both hands. You're going to step back exactly 3 feet. And you are going to stand there without speaking unless Keanu Reeves asks you a direct question. You're going to do this in the next 30 seconds. Am I understood?" It was not a question. "Yes, sir." "Keanu, I will be there in 15 minutes. I apologize without reservation. Whatever you need." "Thank you, Mr. Caldwell." The call ended. The showroom was the quietest it had been since it opened. Trevor walked to the Ghost. His Italian leather shoes made no sound on the marble. He opened the driver's door with both hands. He stepped back 3 feet. He stood there with his hands at his sides and his eyes fixed at a point on the far wall and something dismantling itself steadily in the center of his chest. Diane at her desk exhaled very slowly. Keanu looked at Trevor for one more moment. "You did not ask," he said. The voice was not unkind. It was simply exact. "That is the entire thing. You looked at what I was wearing, and you wrote the conclusion before the story started. You almost had security remove me from a building I came to spend $1,200,000 in." He paused. "I have purchased 4 Rolls-Royces. I have never once worn a suit to do it. You would have known that if you had asked." Trevor had no response that would improve anything. He understood this and said nothing. Keanu sat down in the driver's seat. The cream leather interior had been hand-stitched by 3 craftsmen over 60 hours. The headliner above him was constructed from individual silk threads placed one by one to create the impression of a clear night sky scene from a very quiet place. The steering wheel was wrapped in leather, so carefully conditioned that it felt like something that had been broken in over years of careful use. The wood across the dashboard was book-matched walnut, the grain flowing left to right in one unbroken line. Keanu placed both hands on the wheel and closed his eyes. He was not in Beverly Hills. He was on a two-lane road outside of Santa Barbara at 10:45 on a Wednesday night 4 years ago. He was in his own car, a different car, driving home from dinner, and he was thinking about a conversation he and Sandra had been having for weeks about whether they should drive down to Big Sur before the year ended. He was thinking about her voice in the car 2 hours earlier saying, "If we ever get one of those big silver ones, the kind that looks like it has its own light inside, I want to drive it down the coast with every window open." He was smiling about that when his phone rang. He answered it. The rest of that night was not something he thought about in sequence anymore. He had learned, over 4 years, to hold it as a single fact rather than a series of events. The fact was Sandra was gone. A driver who ran a stop sign at 62 miles per hour on a road she crossed every day. She was 41 years old. She had a laugh that rearranged any room she was in. She had described the color of moonlight on water once while they were watching the Pacific from a restaurant window, and he had laughed and said he would remember that. He had remembered it. He found this car 8 weeks ago on a broker's listing. Celestial silver mist. He read the description of how the paint responded to horizontal evening light, and he had to put his laptop down on the kitchen table and walk outside and stand in the yard for 15 minutes before he could do anything else. He had flown to Beverly Hills on a Thursday afternoon in a canvas jacket and jeans because that was how he had always done everything, and nobody who mattered had ever suggested he do it differently. He opened his eyes. He looked at the dashboard carefully. The wood inlay was perfect on the left side. On the right side, near the passenger air vent, the grain pattern broke. The panel had been replaced. The replacement was close, but not exact. The wood panel on the passenger side, he said to the open air. The grain does not match the driver's side. Someone replaced it after assembly. Wrong piece. Trevor, from his position 3 feet back, wrote something in his notebook. His handwriting was less steady than usual. I want it corrected before delivery, Keanu said. Book matched continuous the way it was designed. Yes, Mr. Reeves. And I want a full mechanical inspection report. Every system. Of course. Keanu sat in the car for a while longer. He was not looking at anything in particular. He was just sitting, being in the color, being in the space that smelled like leather and careful work, and the particular silence of things built for people who were not in a hurry. Then the front door of Apex Luxury Motor Cars opened in a way that front doors rarely open. Chuck Norris did not enter a room. He arrived in one. He was 79 years old and had spent the better part of 5 decades cultivating the specific gravitational field that surrounded him now as he walked across the marble. 6 feet of silver-haired, square-jawed presence in a dark wool jacket, dark slacks, and hand-stitched boots from a craftsman in Fort Worth. His beard was trimmed to the same length it had been for 30 years. His eyes moved across the room the way eyes move when they are accustomed to being the most significant thing in it. Behind him walked 2 men who existed professionally to be behind him. Chuck Norris had owned 7 Rolls-Royce vehicles over the course of his life. He had seen the listing for the Celestial Silver Mist Ghost 2 days ago through his acquisition broker. He had told the broker to move on it. The broker had encountered complications. Chuck Norris resolved complications personally. He stopped in the center of the showroom. His eyes found the Ghost in 3 seconds. Then they found the man sitting in it. He looked at Keanu Reeves the way a man looks at something that is in his way. Not with hostility, with the patient, absolute confidence of someone who has never encountered an obstacle that did not eventually resolve itself in his favor. One of his men leaned in and said something. Chuck's expression did not change, but his eyes recalibrated slightly. He walked to the Ghost. He did not acknowledge Trevor. He spoke to the general direction of the vehicle with the tone of a man placing an order. I'm here for this car. What is the number? Not a question. Trevor's mouth opened. Keanu stepped out of the car and stood on the marble. The 2 men looked at each other. Chuck Norris looked at the jeans, the jacket, the scuffed boot. He performed no internal calculation because Chuck Norris had not performed internal calculations about other human beings since approximately 1984. He simply assessed. Are you purchasing this vehicle? He said. I am, Keanu said. Chuck looked at his acquisition man. Counteroffer. The man produced a phone. $1,450,000, Chuck said to the room. Wire transfer initiated before I reach my car in the parking lot. That is $250,000 above asking price. He looked at Keanu with the particular expression of a man who is not being unkind, simply efficient. I have been acquiring singular vehicles for 40 years. This color does not exist anywhere else in the world. I know what that is worth, and I am prepared to pay for it. Whatever your interest in the car may be, I think $250,000 above asking settles the matter. The showroom was completely still. Trevor looked at the door, through which James Caldwell would be arriving in approximately 9 minutes. Then he looked at Chuck Norris. Then at Keanu. Keanu looked at Chuck Norris for a long moment without any particular expression. 7, he said. Chuck's jaw did not move. 7 what? You have 7 of these already. Ikuyak singula baikulas. That is not a secret. For what? Keanu said. Chuck looked at him steadily. For my collection. In a building. In a climate-controlled facility in Thousand Oaks, yes. Where they are properly maintained and... She described this color to me once, Keanu said. His voice did not waver. It did not perform grief. It simply stated a fact the way a man states a fact when he has had 4 years to decide how to hold it. We were watching the ocean through a restaurant window, and she said the most beautiful color she had ever seen was the color of moonlight on still water. Then she laughed because she knew it sounded like something from a greeting card. He looked at the car. She died 4 years ago. A driver ran a stop sign. She did not do anything wrong. She just happened to be on that road at that time, and someone else made a decision that ended everything. He looked back at Chuck. This is the only car in the world that looks like what she described. I'm going to drive it down the Pacific Coast Highway one time with every window open. Then it goes to a foundation that supports families who have lost someone the same way. Her name was Sandra. That is why I want this car. He paused. You want it for a building in Thousand Oaks. The showroom had never been this quiet. Chuck Norris stood in the silence, and his face did not change. The jaw remained set. The eyes did not soften in the visible way of someone performing emotion. He stood the way he always stood, which was like a man who had decided a long time ago that the world would not move him unless he chose to be moved. But something was happening. It was not visible to Trevor, who was watching the floor. It was barely visible to Keanu, who was watching Chuck's eyes. It was completely invisible to everyone else. Chuck Norris had a son named Danny. He had died 11 years ago at 31 years old. A drunk driver on Route 66 outside Flagstaff at 7 in the evening on a Saturday in August. Danny had done nothing wrong. He was on his way home from a friend's birthday. He had called his father 3 hours earlier to ask about Thanksgiving plans. The last thing Chuck said to him on that call was, "Sounds good. I'll check the schedule." And then 7 hours later, his phone rang again, and it was not Danny. Chuck Norris had never spoken publicly about Danny. He had given one statement to the press 11 years ago and had not said another word about it since. He did not discuss it in interviews. He did not discuss it in the memoir he published 6 years ago that covered his entire career in deliberate and comprehensive detail and contained exactly 0 sentences about his son. He had built around that loss a structure of absolute silence that he maintained the way other men maintain physical training, with daily discipline and total commitment. He was standing in a Beverly Hills showroom looking at a man who had just described, in 4 sentences, the exact shape of the thing Chuck Norris had spent 11 years not describing. A driver ran a stop sign. She did not do anything wrong. She just happened to be on that road at that time. Chuck stood with that for a moment that stretched longer than moments in showrooms usually stretch. He thought about Danny calling about Thanksgiving. He thought about saying, "Sounds good. I'll check the schedule." He thought about the 11 years of not saying anything. He thought about the climate-controlled facility in Thousand Oaks where 7 Rolls-Royces sat in precise alignment and were started once a month by a man whose job it was to start them. He thought about what it means to own a color and what it means to need one. "Her name," Chuck said. His voice was different, still controlled, still the voice of a man who does not surrender things easily, but different. "Sandra." "Sandra," Keanu said. Chuck looked at the car. He looked at the color for a long time. The celestial silver mist finish sat under the showroom light and did what it always did, which was hold something in it that was hard to name, that quality of depth that makes a color feel less like a surface and more like a distance. "I had a son," Chuck said. He did not say anything else for a moment. 11 years ago. Same kind of road. Same kind of driver. He paused. The jaw was still set. The eyes were still controlled. But the sentence had cost something. It had cost the particular expense of a sentence that has been kept inside for 11 years and is being let out for the first time in a room full of strangers. I have not said that to anyone I did not already know in 11 years. Nobody in the showroom moved. His name was Danny, Chuck said. Keanu looked at him, not with pity, not with the careful, managed sympathy of someone who does not know how to hold another person's grief. With recognition. The specific recognition of someone who has been living in the same country as another person without knowing it until this moment. Chuck Norris turned to Trevor. $1,200,000, he said. Original asking price. He looked at Keanu. You pay what the car costs. I will find another vehicle. He said it without the performance of generosity, without the architecture of a man doing something noble. He said it the way you say something that has become the only available truth in a room. He turned and walked toward the exit. At the door, he stopped. He did not fully turn. His voice carried back across the marble. Pacific Coast Highway. Drive it at dusk. The color does something different in that light. A pause, so small it was almost not there. Danny would have liked this car. He walked out into the October afternoon. The showroom did not recover its normal atmosphere for several minutes. Diane at her desk was looking at her hands. The other salesman was staring at the middle distance. Trevor Hollis was standing exactly 3 feet from the ghost with both hands at his sides and something in his face that had not been there when the day began. James Caldwell arrived 7 minutes later. 63 years old. Second-generation dealer. Gray at the temples and careful behind the eyes in the way that 40 years of watching human beings make decisions in expensive rooms will produce. He walked directly to Keanu. He extended both hands. I am sorry, he said. That is the first thing. I am genuinely sorry. It is done, Keanu said. Let's talk about the wood panel. They talked about the wood panel for 22 minutes. James Caldwell personally called the Rolls-Royce interior specialist who had worked on the original build. The specialist flew from Chicago to Los Angeles 4 days later. The passenger side panel was removed and replaced with a piece cut from the same walnut board as the original, the grain flowing continuous and unbroken from one side of the dashboard to the other, the way it was always meant to be. 3 days after that, the drive happened. Keanu left Beverly Hills at 4:20 in the afternoon. He drove north through the city and then west of the coast and then south along Pacific Coast Highway as the October sun began its descent. He drove with every window down. The November air off the Pacific came in cold and direct and smelled like salt and distance and the particular clarity of coastal evenings in California. He did not play any music. He drove in the sound of the wind and the engine and the ocean, and in the language that requires no words and makes no sound, he told Sandra about the color. He told her it was exactly right. He told her she had described it perfectly in a restaurant window on a night he could not remember the occasion for, but could remember every other detail of. He told her the color had its own light inside it, exactly like she said. He drove for 2 hours and 41 minutes. He stopped at a turnout above the water south of Malibu as the sun reached the horizon. He got out and stood beside the car. The celestial silver mist finish in the horizontal evening light did exactly what the Goodwood engineer had written in his notes. It turned the pale and luminous blue-silver of moonlight on still water. It held the light and gave it back changed. A man walking with his teenage son on the path nearby stopped. The son looked at the car and said, without looking up from it, "What color is that?" Keanu looked at the car. "The color of something someone described to me once," he said. The son looked at him. "That's not a color." "No," Keanu said, "but it is the best answer I have." He got back in the car and drove south as the sky went dark behind him. 6 weeks later, the Ghost was transferred to the Sandra Reeves Memorial Fund for Road Safety and Victim Support. The fund, established in Sandra's name, provided financial and psychological support to families who had lost someone to preventable road accidents across California. The car was to be the centerpiece of an inaugural benefit auction the following spring. It sold for $2,080,000. Every dollar went to the fund. In its first operational year, the Sandra Reeves Fund supported 112 families in California. It provided emergency financial assistance, long-term counseling access, and legal advisory services to families navigating the aftermath of road accidents. It partnered with 4 hospitals and 11 community organizations. In year 2, it expanded to Nevada and Oregon. Trevor Hollis resigned from Apex Luxury Motor Cars 4 months after that Thursday afternoon. He did not leave because he was asked to. He left because he had spent 4 months sitting behind his desk on a marble floor in the charcoal suit and finding that the instinct he had spent 3 years perfecting had stopped working. Not because it had become less accurate, because he had stopped being able to use it without seeing, in the same moment, a man standing in front of a $1.2 million car with his fingertips 2 inches from the hood and being told he did not belong there. He gave his resignation to James Caldwell in person. It was 6 sentences long. It read, "I spent 3 years learning to read what people were wearing and calling it reading people. Those are not the same skill, and I confused them for long enough to do real damage. I told a man he did not belong in a room because of his jacket. I was wrong about his jacket, and wrong about the room, and wrong about the most important thing in any business that involves human beings, which is that you do not know anything about a person until you ask them. I'm going to spend some time learning to ask first. Thank you for 3 years." James Caldwell read it twice. He had it framed the same afternoon. He hung it in the employee break room beside a note typed on Apex letterhead. The note read, "The most expensive mistake in this business is not a bad deal. It is a judgment made before a conversation begins. Ask first. Always ask first." 8 months after the benefit auction, a black SUV pulled up outside the Sandra Reeves Fund offices in Los Angeles on a Tuesday morning. A man got out. He walked inside without calling ahead. He asked to see the director. The receptionist said the director was in a meeting. The man said he would wait. He sat in the waiting area in a dark jacket and dark slacks and waited for 20 minutes without looking at his phone. When the director, a woman named Patricia, came out and saw who was waiting in her reception area, she stood in the doorway of her own office for a moment without saying anything. Chuck Norris stood up. "I did not want any acknowledgement of this," he said. "I'm not doing a press event. I'm not available for photographs or interviews or statements. I want to write a check and leave." Patricia said she understood. He wrote a check for $500,000. In the memo line, he wrote one word: "Danny." He gave it to Patricia. He shook her hand. He walked out. When the acquisition was processed and the fund's accountant asked Patricia about the donor, she said only that it was a private donation from a family that understood what the fund was for. No announcement was made. No press release was issued. 6 months later, a journalist writing a piece on road safety advocacy in California contacted the fund and asked about a rumored large anonymous donation. Patricia confirmed a significant private contribution had been received but provided no details. The journalist pushed. Patricia said only that the donor had asked for complete privacy and that their privacy would be completely respected. The journalist wrote 2 sentences about it in a sidebar and moved on. Those 2 sentences were read by Trevor Hollis in a coffee shop in Santa Monica on a Wednesday morning. He read them 3 times. He sat with his coffee going cold and stared at the window for a while. Then he took out a notebook and wrote something at the top of a blank page. He wrote, "Ask first." He had been writing that at the top of every page in every notebook since the day he resigned. It had become the only organizing principle of his professional life, which he was in the process of rebuilding from its foundation on different materials than the ones he had used before. The Celestial Silver Mist Ghost currently belongs to the permanent collection of the Sandra Reeves Memorial Fund. It is not stored. It is on display at the fund's main office in Los Angeles, positioned near the entrance where is the first thing visitors see when they walk in. In the particular light of late afternoon, which enters through the west-facing glass wall of the building at a low angle, the finish does what it always does. It turns the pale, luminous blue-silver of moonlight on still water and holds it for approximately 20 minutes before the light shifts and it returns to its daytime self. Staff members who have worked there long enough have started staying a little later on clear afternoons. Not because anyone asked them to, just because the thing is worth seeing. A brass plate is mounted on the interior panel near the glove compartment. It reads, "For Sandra, you described this color once, and I never forgot." With all of it, always. Children who come to the fun with their families sometimes press their faces against the velvet rope and ask what color that is. The staff tell them it is called celestial silver mist. They explain that the color was developed over 8 months by craftsmen in England and exists on this car and nowhere else in the world. Some of the children find this interesting. Some of them move on quickly to other things. One afternoon, a boy of about 10 stood in front of the car for a very long time without speaking. His mother stood beside him. She had lost his father 2 years earlier on a highway in the Central Valley and had found the fund through a hospital social worker and had been receiving support from the fund's counseling program for 14 months. She came to the office regularly and sometimes brought her son. The boy looked at the celestial silver mist finish as it held the late afternoon light, and he said, without turning around, "It looks like it knows something." His mother looked at the car. "Yes," she said, "I think it does." The staff member who was standing nearby wrote it down later. She sent it to the fund director, who sent it to the only person she had a contact address for who might want to read it. It arrived in an email on a Thursday afternoon. The reply came back in 4 minutes. It was 3 words. "Thank you. Yes." No signature. No name. Just 3 words from a man who had driven a silver car down the California coast at dusk with every window open and kept a promise to someone who was not there to receive it, but who he was entirely certain could feel it from wherever she was. Thank you for following this story all the way to the end. Let us know in the comments below what moved you most. If this story has touched something in you and you would like to stand with us in bringing more voices of truth and hope to light, please consider supporting our work. Even the smallest gift helps us continue creating and sharing these powerful stories. You can find the donate link in the description below. And of course, do not forget to subscribe so you will not miss the next chapter we are already preparing for you.